I am very lucky to have on the Henry Harrison podcast, the Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance series, James Dickey. And James has been a friend. Actually, we haven't quite squared that up, but I'd have to say it was late 90s, and we joined an entrepreneur group together, and we were in a breakout group called Forum, where you meet once a month, you go on trips once a year, and you really get to know each other because the purpose of it is an informal board of directors to kind of help each other. So you talk about the most important things in your life. And we've been friends all this time, even though James is now living in Austin, Texas, and we don't see each other as much. Um, but hello, James.
Hello, Henry. It is great to be with you and join you on the podcast. I'm so glad you're doing this. It's a great opportunity and always fun to see.
Well, and one of the neat things that memories I have with James, there's so many, but is that we would go to their house during Christmas time. As you can see from the background, we're getting towards Christmas. And he and his wife had, I believe you could correct me, but multiple sheds out back in the backyard because they would have parties. And I don't know if you're still doing it, but every room was decorated to the T. Like some people have one room, it's like, wow, their whole house is that way. So it was really a fun event. And Olga and I, my wife, we did that for many years. So the tradition
Yeah,
continues.
we
Well,
had so much fun doing that. Yeah, Linda loves doing it, and we still do. She's got several different trees, and each one's got a different theme, and people seem to love it, and she certainly loves it, and I'm happy to support it.
well, so you have had a very diverse and interesting career. Um, why don't I know what you're doing now, and I pretty much what you're doing all along, but it's hard to actually keep up with. If I was trying to recite it from memory, I don't know that I could. Well, why don't you share about Liberty for Kids and your role member of C5 Youth Foundation? And I don't know if you're still doing JD Key part time, but that was a consulting company you had for at least 4 years. So what are you up to now, James?
So right now, I've focused pretty much all of my efforts on Liberty for the Kids, which is a fantastic grassroots organization to advocate for universal school choice for parents and kids in Texas. I personally benefited dramatically from school choice as a kid. I was able to do that because part of my growing up, my dad actually took a second job so he could pay for my private school tuition. And then later in my life, I went back to public school and was very fortunate to be able to go to a magnet school. And I have no doubt at all that if I had not gone to that magnet school, there's no way I would have been able to go off to Stanford and have the education and the life that I've had. And it has always broken my heart that my friends from high school and from those in that surrounding area and in high schools like that just don't have the same kind of options. And so it's been a cause I've always believed in. And with the governor's support and lieutenant governor's support, right now really is the best moment we've had in Texas to try to advance universal school choice. And I'm so excited to be on the front of it. But it's a natural evolution of what I've been doing the last few years, which has been a combination of political activism and grassroots activism and consulting with companies on how to be more effective in the things they need to deal with regulatory affairs or government affairs. And then also the volunteer work I've done. I'm on the board, as you said. In fact, I'm the chair of the Trustee Affairs Board for C5 Texas, which is an organization that helps kids, actually stays with kids and mentors them from 7th through 12th grade to make sure that they are college ready, that they are community oriented, that they are prepared to serve and lead well in their community. And C5 has done that for 20 years and has changed the world for dozens of folks and their families and their communities. We actually have kids now in the program whose parents were in the program and whose mother was in the program. And so that's a really amazing thing and something I'm very proud of. And that's the kind of thing, having a positive impact on kids' life and Texas's future, is something I'm really excited about. And then, so I've done that as a volunteer. I also did the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission. I was on the regulatory affairs body for that. That was another volunteer effort I did. And of course, I've done a lot of volunteering with campaigns and candidates and that kind of stuff. I'm very, very happy to do all of it, and working to advance liberty for the kids cause for universal school choice in Texas is the perfect culmination of all of that.
Well, we won't talk in depth about this, but I just know you and Linda have raised and educated some great kids as well. So you have
Thank
firsthand experience of that. Um, and this show, we talk about business, entrepreneurship, and finance. Um, and it's not a politically oriented show, so we will take people from all walks of life. But you in particular have had a business aspect of finance because not only were you the Texas State chairman of the Republican Party, if I phrase that right, chairman of the Texas Republican Party, you had a consulting firm which helped people with uh, well, politics, but also outside of politics, just managing the maze of federal, state, and local government regulations. Um, and before that, you were a different kind of entrepreneur, which we'll get to, or we can start with that. With I think your first business was insurance. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I started my career in insurance, and I started doing marketing and sales to agencies. I never sold to the public, but I would recruit agents and then help them grow their business with us, help them grow their business, period, but also with us. And that gave me a lot of great experience. And very quickly, just a couple of years in, I was able to move into product management and compliance. So the insurance business is regulated by the 50 states. And so I have experience working with state regulators from New York and California to Florida and Maine to Texas. And that experience gave me a lot of time, a lot of lessons on what to do and what not to do when trying to comply with very differing regulations, especially when it comes to pushing the envelope. Because I frequently, when I was with Citigroup's insurance operation, I was head of new product development. So we were really pushing the envelope on what we could do and how we could do it. And part of doing all of that, I found that the limiting factor nearly everywhere that I was technology, that many insurance companies had very old systems and very limiting systems. And so I found a couple of fantastic developers. I understood the business and I understood the business problem. And I was able to partner up with a couple of amazing technology guys. And we were able to build a product that was really the first product that would let the insurance professionals change how their algorithm was done, produce automatic compliance documents that were guaranteed to match because they came right out of the system. So that it was guaranteed that your system would actually do what you were telling the regulators that you were going to do, which is a big problem. When anytime you're doing a manual transition from, they would have compliance people who would produce documentation what was supposed to be done, and then they would have programmers and test people who would try to implement what was in those documents. Quite frequently, especially in very complicated cases, the two didn't exactly match. And that could cause giant compliance problems and potential fines and negative consequences for the companies. So we developed software that would address that problem, plus make it easier and more practical for them to get more sophisticated on their product at pricing, which would make them more profitable, able to grow their business faster. But as you can imagine, as a startup with just a couple of people selling to multi-billion-dollar insurance companies for an enterprise internal, a key tool in their enterprise, it was challenging. And ultimately, we ended up selling it, and now it's been part of Oracle Insurance's. Insbridge was the company we started, and Oracle Insbridge is still a thing now, 20 something years later.
And that was an entrepreneurial startup with you and your partner or partners. Uh, so
Yeah, it was. And it was It was nearly all bootstrap. We did do some friend and family round. We ended up raising not that much money for it, but we had all the struggles of a startup. I mean, we there were times we were on road trips doing sales presentations, and the three of us co-founders would split a hotel room to save on costs while we were trying to pitch some of the biggest insurance companies in the world to buy our stuff. And we had all the pains and all the struggles that especially a leading edge technology or startup company will have of trying to make sure we get testimonials, trying to make sure we do everything else well. And it was really my first experience learning that the best product does not always win. Distribution really matters. Being able to get through the hurdles really matters, because in a lot of our cases, the biggest competition was actually the internal programmers. We had one scenario where we were willing to license our software to that company for 300 grand a year. The CIO turned around and got the board to approve her spending 2.5 million to build the thing, and with an expected delivery date of 18 months. 2 years later, we were on version 4 of our system, and they still had not delivered the original system, but they had spent more than the 2.5 million. And that kind of competition we hit all the time. And that was part of why we made it through. We grew our team. I think by the time I left, we were at 15 team members. We grew the team. We struggled through. We made it work. But ultimately, we ended up being able to sell, and having a strategic buyer mattered a lot.
But one of the things that's very interesting, that you're very interesting, on LinkedIn, you have a big scroll. So you got to scroll down a lot to get through all the, and typically not short-term things either. I mean, I don't think there's any of them that are less than 3 or 4 years. And so you started your own business, several businesses, including technology and programming, also insurance. You've been board members and now a director of a nonprofit, and then you work for a big corporation like Citibank. So I think people might wonder, I would call you a serial entrepreneur and serial follow your passion, follow your interests, follow the opportunities. I'm sure you had a lot of choices along the way. Um, People might wonder, well, how did you pick some of those paths?
Yeah, it is a strange thing. It's not necessarily something I would advise. In fact, as you say, I've got three fantastic kids who range from 20 to 30 years old. And my advice to them is, pick some field and stick in it and let it compound. The compounding matters in our career and in life just as much as anything else. But I was always passionate about finding a way where I could have a positive impact. And you're right, I literally flipped in my career, from Citigroup to a small insurance company, to going to Kemper Insurance, which was another very large insurance operation, to doing a startup with three people, to then doing a startup with a friend of mine of a couple people. And so it fluctuated, and it was always, where's an opportunity that I can have a big positive impact, whether it be in I was trying with Insbridge to have an impact on the insurance industry as a whole, or at a company like Citigroup, where I was able to lead a great team and produce amazing results that produce millions in positive income growth per quarter. It was, no matter what we were doing, it was always a chance of having an impact. And the same goes for the political stuff that I did, which, financially wasn't a great move, but absolutely in terms of impact, I wanted to be able to have an impact on recruiting more candidates and having better people out representing our organization. And I was very proud of what we did there too.
I always thought you just wanted a few trips to the Oval Office to meet the president. I never bought any of that. Hey, make a difference stuff. Obviously, I'm kidding. Um, no, I think I've always known that about you. You want to, and I found this consistent on people that have come on the podcast is they do something they're passionate about that they like, and they do something where they believe they can make a difference. And I've quoted this a few times, but my dad also used to say, find something that you love, preferably, or at least like to do for your profession, because you're going to spend a large portion of your life doing that. And I think sometimes, I don't know what sets people back from doing that, but maybe fear of taking the leap, or, but it sure is a nice thing to follow. On the other hand, there's a lot of benefits. Sometimes you got to just, I'm sure there are hard times, you got to just push through a difficult time and maybe stay at the whole company your whole career. And maybe some difficult times there, but you get through those and then the next light comes. So it's not necessarily depends on the person. Depends on the person.
Absolutely.
Um, so when you were a kid, did you ever think that you would start companies, run a Republican party, a political party for a state, or do any of the things that you've done? Or what were you thinking when you were in elementary school, junior high school?
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall having clear visions of what I wanted to do growing up. Now, I was fortunate that I did grow up in a family where my uncle and grandfather, they had a small business. My father at one time had a small business. But those experiences didn't go that great. So it wasn't necessarily a thing that was obvious, right? Dad built this business, and so I'll go into that, or Dad built this business, so I'll build another one. It was, and in fact, for the last 30 years of my dad's career, he was a hospice chaplain. So really, I mean, the best, and that was a switch from owning his own business. And in between, he did a lot of things while he was going through seminary and doing his internships and residency. So, I mean, the thing that Dad really modeled was to serve others and make an impact. And he absolutely did that, and did that at the toughest times of people's lives, and it's incredibly admirable, and not a thing I could do. And I'm grateful for his example. But that's probably the biggest thing I took away from his life. I mean, he was a honorable man who raised his kids well, and I'm incredibly blessed. He's still alive and still sharp, but he will have left a great legacy because he's got a beautiful family that all is grateful for his impact. Um, that was the best thing that he left me with, or the best impression, the best impact he had on guiding mine. Otherwise, it was very much, I worked my way through college, and as I was getting out of college, I interviewed with dozens of folks. And the thing that made me start in insurance was when I was being interviewed by the executive who was recruiting. So it was down to an insurance company and Ford. And I asked the VP at Ford who was interviewing me, if I join you in 5 years, where would I be? And he said, well, you do 18 months at one of these two jobs and 18 months at this one, and then you'll do 2 years at one of these three jobs. So in 5 years now, you'll be at one of these three jobs. And then there was an insurance company, Great American Insurance. They have a ballpark they sponsor, they have naming rights on in Cincinnati. Great American Insurance was hiring. And the VP I interviewed with, I asked him the same question. If I join you in 5 years, where will I be? And he said, I have no clue. He said, I'm 29. I'm the youngest VP the company's had. My position didn't even exist 2 years ago. And who knows what you'd be able to do. That's really up to you. And I was hooked. That was that. And sure enough, um, 3 years into working for that organization, I had worked for them in 5 different states, and the job I was in had not existed when I started.
How about that? Well, and I do know that while you don't wear it on your sleeve, your faith plays a role in your decisions and where you're going to go. And I think you translate that into making a difference, applying your talents and skills for the better good, which I believe that is good business, and that is good capitalism. And my grandfather was a PhD in economics, and he had me read Adam Smith as a kid. So good business means people live better lives and higher prosperity and better education, better health care, better entertainment. Uh, it's a good thing, and good people do it. Sometimes it gets black.
Absolutely. I could, yeah, I could not agree more. I saw someone who's actually not a believer posted the other day that, and he's very well connected to a lot of successful people in a lot of different industries. And he made the point that he does not know a single person who is successful in business over the long haul who does not have a reputation for being a person of integrity. People know whether they can trust you or not. Over the long term, that compounds. It shows. I mean, the people who invested when my partner and I started up the insurance operation 15 years ago, the people who invested it, they had known us for years and they were willing to invest. And because they had known us for years. The folks who had invested in Insbridge, it was the same. And just over and over again, the people I work with now have nearly all come from referrals. And the folks I work with at Liberty for the Kids, they are folks who I've known for 15 years, and we've seen each other operate for over that long-term period. And yes, living out my faith is part of being being a person of integrity, doing what else I will do, and following through, and having people be able to count on you, and wanting to serve, wanting to make an impact. It matters.
One of the things that is hard in life for, I think, all of us to a certain extent is change. It could be exciting, but was there hesitation when you went out and started your own consulting company, JDK? Was there hesitation when you went out and started um, the insurance software company? What got you over that? If there was, I guess you had confidence and you believe it was your place to go.
Yeah, some of that has always been, some of it is I do pray about it, and the right next step frequently becomes fairly obvious. So with Insbridge, it was just very, very clear. I met up with the right people. I had seen this problem over and over and over again, and I had just run into it again. And then I ran into the developers who could actually make my vision a reality. And as we started to talk about it, we all got excited about it. That just was a clear signal to me that, okay, now is the time. This is great. I'm also incredibly blessed. I mean, Linda has put up with me for 35 years. We celebrated our 35th anniversary earlier this year, and to really to have a spouse who's supportive and to be able to count on that has made a huge difference in being able to be comfortable to give things a try. Same when we started the insurance company. It was just very obvious. My friend had had a perfect moment in his career for him to give it a try. And we had some things happen at Kemper that made it a perfect moment for me to give it a try. And he had called me about what he was doing, and then I called him and said, you know what? And we had perfectly complementary skills. That I had experience on the system side and on the marketing side, and he had experience on the wholesale carrier relationships and other things that we needed. And I also had experience with Texas agents, and so it was just a perfect blend. And the next clear step was obvious. The same with JDK. I wasn't really sure what I would do. And before I had even tried to figure out what I ought to do, I literally got calls from folks who ended up becoming clients who said, we love what you were doing at the party. We would love for you to help us do this now. And it was just an obvious next step to take. And that went on, and it went on from there. And same with Liberty for the Kids. I was talking with the founder, and he was telling me about what he was doing, about his vision for the future and what he'd like to do. And it was crystal clear that this was a wonderful mission that I could spend the next decade working on, and that someone good needed to spend the next decade working on. And met with more of the board members, and they agreed. And so now I'm devoted fully to that, and very excited about it.
What caused you to go back and get your MBA at Baylor? You're certainly well educated. in business too. So you had the real world experience, and then you have the formal training.
Actually, I finished that MBA right before we met. And it was a 2 year program. We had just moved to Dallas in 92. And my wife and I had lived all over the country, from California to Connecticut, Florida to Cincinnati, Ohio, Salt Lake City, Utah. We had lived all of those places. And I had just, had transferred to Dallas and was doing new product development for Republic Insurance. And I just wanted to be sure that I'd be able to take the next leap in my career. And I was concerned about that. And I had a lot of friends from undergrad who had just finished doing their MBA and they had gone full time. And I was already married and we had just had our first kid. And so our son had been born earlier that year. And it was very much a sense of, well, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. And I thought it would help, especially with the corporate folks I was doing. I don't know how much it actually helped. I ended up getting the job at Citigroup before I finished the MBA. And then shortly after I finished my MBA, I did end up moving to a much better position at a smaller company. So maybe that mattered, but it's quite possible I would have qualified for that position fully well without the MBA. In my case, it was good because it gave me a good comfort level with the financial analysis and stuff, which I ended up at that next position. We did evaluate some potential acquisitions and things like that, and I did feel a lot more comfortable with that because I had that experience. But I have told all my kids, make sure you can get out of it what you want to get out of it. I'm much less inclined to say you ought to have it just to have the piece of paper. In fact, I would say don't get it if all you're going to get is piece of paper. Get it if there is something else that you're going to get out of it.
Well, I started my first business when I was 25, and all I knew was home building, home building, home building. So I went at night to SMU to get here in Dallas, Southern Methodist University, to get my MBA, as you recall. And for me, it was about learning something outside of home building, and the analysis and the perspective. And I think it helped me. I didn't plan on getting a job. I haven't had a job since. I don't know if anybody cares if I have it, but I felt like it
Right.
helped me. So yeah, that was my goal at the time. And they had an entrepreneurial institute. I think they still do, where they taught entrepreneurial
They do.
classes, case study along the lines of Harvard. So that was helpful as well. Well, fun facts. I noticed you've got more LinkedIn connections than anybody else I've ever looked at their LinkedIn page on. And you are proficient in sign language. And I know a little bit of the history of that, but would you like to share that? Because that's not an everyday
Yeah.
thing. The
So
regular old
actually,
parents.
yeah, my brother is deaf, and my son is hard of hearing, and so I learned as a kid. I learned sign language and have practiced it still, and sometimes get the opportunity to use it, and I'm always happy to do so.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, your brother and
Yeah.
and a son. How about that? Well, what a great discussion. I love doing these podcasts, and some big time podcast guy got asked why he started. He said, "Well, I get to interview my friends and ask them all the questions I couldn't do if we were just hanging out." So that's not why I started, but it's an added benefit to talk to someone like you. Even though I think I've heard most of it, but not all of it because you've done so many different things. So it's really really neat. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to wrap up on. You want to share what maybe if you have something in mind, or would you like to share what it's like to be an executive director of a nonprofit helping kids? Uh,
Well, so that it's a wonderful challenge, but it's also a fitting kind of amalgamation of the experience I've had over the last few years. The responsibilities in the role are to raise funds for our nonprofit, to work with legislative efforts to try to get good bills passed and to make sure they stay good bills, so the amendments are not destructive, right? That is a beneficial kind of bill that is passed, and to work with grassroots activists to make sure that the legislators that we're speaking to, that they hear from their constituents That is what we need to do, that we need to pass universal school choice with no strings. And just this week, we saw an amazing example. There was this continuing resolution that was going to be put forward, and 1,500 page bill that was supposed to be voted on in hours. And there's a lot of hullabaloo right now that Elon Musk told them not to do it, and so they're not doing it. And that's not what happened at all. What happened was Elon helped spread the word, and the grassroots spoke up. People, citizens spoke up and said, "This is nuts, don't do this." And so their members had the confidence to say, "No, I'm not going to do this." Well, that's what we do on a much smaller basis in Texas. We have 50,000 grassroots activists who will reach out and talk to their members and say, we need this. And that helps those who want to do the right thing. That helps them have the support they need to do the right thing. And that helps those who might naturally not necessarily do the right thing, make sure that they stay doing the right thing. And so it's a fantastic combo. It's the right mix of how you do activism and how you get political change. You work with the legislators, but you work with their voters and their constituents, because legislators do listen to their voters. And so that's a good thing I'd leave everybody with. If you want help, obviously, for government relations stuff, there are tons of great lobbyists and government relations folks who can help. And certainly I've loved doing that. But you can just call your member as their constituent, and it does matter. So I highly recommend people do that. And that is fantastic. I'll also say, Henry, it's been fantastic knowing you guys for 25 years. Since 97, I think is probably when we had that lunch that we got together. And yeah, it's been neat doing life together. So even when we've been apart, we've stayed in touch, and I love that.
Well, James Dickey extraordinaire, I'll call you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.